What is more important, what you see or what you hear? When we interpret media, are we watching or are we listening? In the context of film, sound design is integral to both the execution of the story and audience perception. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ligia Mardari, and I study economics in the College of Arts and Sciences. I would like to thank my fantastic advisor, Dr. Chris Rominger, as well as my director of photography and wonderful roommate, Emma Hagert. You might not have expected an economics student to deliver this presentation on film, but I wanted to use my final year as an opportunity to dive into one of my unexplored passions, that being music and film. Music has always been a huge part of my life, and it was only recently that I began to explore my relationship with music, as well as the relationship sound plays with everyday life. Sound has always been a major part of film. This is something we have all thought about, at least a little bit, but probably not so deeply. We can all recall that menacing cello of the Jaws theme or the creaking doors of your favorite horror movie. For example, A Quiet Place used sound and the absence of sound as a character and a vehicle for the film's plot. In hopes of bringing light to the often overlooked power of sound, I created 2 films. I studied how sound can trigger different emotions. For the context of this presentation, I studied 2 emotions, joviality and tension. I wanted to take my study a step past analyzing sound design as a viewer and explore what it's like to analyze sound design as a creator. I also incorporated my interest in data in creating the sound design and in thinking about powerful areas of further study. Before continuing, I would like to give some important background information on sound design. Sound design refers to how filmmakers enhance the mood, atmosphere, and tone of a film to create an immersive experience for the audience and enhance visual storytelling. But today, by the end of my presentation, I hope to show that sound design not only can enhance, but also alter visual storytelling. So I started my project by studying some existing background research on sound, emotion, and film, and I found that genre of song plays a very formative role in the predictability of a plot. I also learned that different characteristics of music, such as tempo or chord progressions, can elicit specific emotions. For example, fear is often associated with a lower pitch in songs. These findings were supported by a multitude of researchers in the field, and after having conducted this research, I made note of specific techniques to approach the next phase of my Keystone project, and that was the most exciting phase, the creation phase. With the generous guidance of my wonderful roommate Emma, a film aficionado, these films were made possible.
I actually created playing soccer. Yeah, it was intramural. It was a game, and I don't even know what happened. It just happened. I'm still gonna play.
And now for the second version.
Baby, I've never been a fan of review. But baby, I'm a fan of everything that you do. Make my day, dry my eyes. She took me to her room, attend a rendezvous. Call me that deep blue. She called me that deep blue. Baby, I don't wanna take all of your time. I know you've got a million other things on your mind. Attend the rendezvous. Call me that deep blue. She called me that deep blue.
So as you can see, these two films had the exact same visual component, but the audio was the only thing that was different. The choices made in choosing the sound design for the films were very intentional, and I even factored in data. Considering my background in economics, I wanted to incorporate that in some capacity. So I used Spotify Web API to access information about potential songs that I considered using for my short films. And this helped display information about the audio features, such as tempo, speechiness, which refers to the amount of lyrics within the songs. This chart that you can see here details the components of the sound design that I incorporated into the two films, and it reflects my prior research. The first one being tension, and the second version conveying joviality. Some examples of factors I considered, one being the lower pitch with the first sound design for the tension interpretation. As I mentioned earlier, that conveys fear. And then for the second version, I incorporated popular song to convey a sense of predictability, which I also found from my research. I further incorporated elements of data into the sound design by conducting analysis on an existing data set that connected variables related to musical features to different emotions, being sad, happy, energetic, and calm. As you can see here, the yellow box plot displays the median tempo and the interquartile range for songs that listeners perceived as being associated with happy. And the tempo of the jovial film that I displayed was around 108 beats per minute, which is within the range. So that was another factor that I considered in choosing that song. I used this analysis as an additional tool to target a specific emotion. But there are many other areas for further study, which I think are very important to consider, that are related to sound and emotion. Data on sound is valuable from the perspective of the creator, for example, in terms of what characteristics they could incorporate if they're trying to have their music licensed for a particular film. This kind of data is also valuable for the perspective of the sound designer in terms of optimizing the backtrack of a specific scene that they would like to convey a certain emotion with. And finally, this data can also provide insight for the consumer to understand their emotional attachment to media, and also how music streaming can use, how music streaming services track individuals' patterns on these apps and websites. So it is clear there are many implications for future work on the intersection of film, sound, psychology, and data. Thank you.
We'll open up the floor for questions. Hi, Ligia. Thanks a lot for the work and for the presentation. It was very impressive. So yeah, if I read between the lines, there is almost subconscious power of sound to influence emotion when at least compared to visuals. And if so, you believe that there is a dark side of that power when it comes to things like advertisement of political campaigns?
That is a really good question. Yeah, I would say definitely there is subconscious, and especially, what I was saying at the beginning with how we're not always aware of how sound can affect the ways we interpret film. An example that comes to mind is last semester there was a Prod 1 screening for a class here at BU that I went to, and there was a film that was about someone that, had feelings for another individual, but because of the sound design, the entire time I was watching the film, I thought it was about, it was very mysterious, so I thought it was kind of about this person that was stalking someone else. I didn't realize in the moment that it was because of the sound design that's why I felt that way, but I do think that there are definitely some factors that play into, altering the way you interpret things. And then as for the second part of your question, there definitely could be a dark side to having, that subconscious, factor in so much, so heavy. I can get back to you with specific examples as to, where I've seen this in the past. I would have to think on that, but I definitely see that being a possibility.
We have time for one more question.
I think this was very cool, and seeing the data analysis that you did specifically on the Spotify data set, I think was really interesting and something that I've never seen before, so kudos to you on that. I'm kind of curious about your film design. I noticed that you used short films to kind of show the power of sound psychology and sound design, so I'm curious what you think the differences would be between a short film versus a longer film, and where the interplay between the plot and the sound design is in terms of that influence it can have on us.
That's a wonderful question. I was talking about this with my advisor a couple weeks ago, actually, and it was kind of after reflecting, I realized that short films are very powerful in terms of sound design because your attention is drawn to the one film in that span of 2 minutes, so kind of the whole attention is drawn to the sound. Whereas in a longer film, there are different opportunities for different songs, so there's less pressure on putting, on having the perfect song for the entire film. So I would say I wanted to specifically focus on short films for this project because it was just, your attention is predominantly on the sound for just the short 2-minute video. Yeah.
Thank you. We're going to get ready for the next presentation.